Welcome to the Ambitious Coach Lab, powered by 9bit. I'm your host, Dr. Cam Lawson. Each week, we explore the real tactics, tough conversations, and breakthrough moments that drive coaching success. Let's jump into today's episode. Well, hello, friends. I am so excited to announce that we have the one, the only Gil Gerretsen with us. We were talking just before this started that you are the only Gil Gerretsen in the world. So that
Right.
is a claim to fame. But Gil is the founder of BizTrek. And so we actually connected here in Greenville. He is local to Greenville. And so we just crossed paths and have sparked a really fun, unique friendship and just companionship. And I have learned so much from Gil over the years. And like many others, have also been influenced by his work and coaching. And so when we were thinking about guests, I had multiple people recommend you to come on this podcast. So I was like, we got to make this happen. So welcome to the show, Gil. Happy to have you, man.
Thank you for inviting me. Look forward to our chat.
Yes, it's going to be fun. So, for those of you that maybe don't know you as well, why don't you tell us a little bit about your entrepreneurial journey into getting into launching BizTrek and how you got to that point?
Well, I really started entrepreneurship young, so some the listeners may not know, but or back when I was in my teens, there was a program called Junior Achievement where we actually made a product, and I went out to sell that, and ended up being the top student salesman in Canada. I sold more of these. What we made were the little triangle games. If you've ever been to a Cracker Barrel restaurant with the little peg,
Yes.
well, we developed those and sold that, and I sold them, oh, thousands of them door to door. I actually maybe a little over 1,000, but so that kind of got me hooked on business. My brothers are one's a dentist and one's a doctor, and I'm the business guy. And so that kind of got me the start. So then I went through college and got a degree, double degree actually, in marketing and in management. But I loved marketing. And my first job, really while still in school, was selling printing supplies, and I realized I was horrible. I couldn't sell business cards to anybody. So my dad was an engineer, and he said, there's process to how you do this, and he was a sales engineer. So I set out about how do you actually do this, and started studying it, and turns out I got kind of good at it. So then my career kind of after I graduated, I started doing corporate turnarounds. I'd go in as the fix-it guy for working for a board of directors, fix a company. Did that for about a dozen years. Then actually wrote some software and built a software company. Built it and then sold it within 3 years. So kind of at that point, my wife and I could kind of go where we wanted to, and that's how we ended back here in Greenville. I'd been through a little stint here and loved it here. So did that, and after that, I had some friends from our church and who own businesses that I'd kind of counseled and said, "We love the system that you've developed. You need to teach that to other people." So in 1994, I launched BizTrek with the idea of teaching my system to other people, and have now worked with, well, probably over 1,000 different business CEOs, who personally one-on-one. Plus, I don't even know how many are using the system on self-implementation. But
Right.
so that's kind of been my journey for the last 32 years right now. I've been mentoring CEOs and founders one-on-one, as well as making the system available to other people.
Oh man, that's so cool. I didn't even know some of that. That's fascinating. Also, my brain wants to dig into the little triangles at Cracker Barrel because those are so addicting. But that's
I used
not
to
what we're
know
here to.
like 32 different solutions for
Oh man,
it.
I need to pick your brain. I feel like I've memorized the one that I can do every time.
I think that's where I'm
But
at now.
yeah, right. But that's obviously not why we're here to talk about the little triangle game. But I mean, that's such a cool representation of so many founders. I mean, what a legacy over 30 plus years of influencing. So when you started down that trek, it sounds like you had some people that were a little bit, hey, you should teach other people this framework. I mean, what did that look like when you first pulled the trigger getting into coaching, into kind of launching? All right, I'm actually going to start to build an offering for this that will actually be attractive to other founders.
Well, I mean, it was almost like when they said, "You gotta do this," I had been teaching the system to them. So when I built my software company, I kind of refined the system as how am I gonna do this? Because
Hmm.
to me, if it's not a system, then you can't repeat it. That's what I learned from Peter Drucker, right? And so I'd kind of worked it out then. So pretty much from the day I launched, once I said I'm going to do this, I was pretty much full with clientele right off the beginning, it really just taught the system. So it's taken different forms over the years. In the early years, I really started just one on one with some people here in Greenville, and then it just kind of expanded from that over the years. So, I mean, I've worked with clients across the U.S., Canada, Europe, the Australia area. So it's kind of gone all over the place.
I love that. No, that's yeah, that checks out. I feel like that's a very, especially over the course of years, lots of time passes. There's gonna be iterations and whatnot. So I mean, you've spent a lot of time working with founders, and it a lot of times it is geared towards okay, let's figure out why growth has stalled. Right? That's a lot. I mean, especially as a founder, I mean that is every founder's going to go through that. There's going to be seasons of that. So when someone walks into an engagement with you, I mean, when how often are they convinced that it's a marketing problem? And we kinda start to unpack, like, what is your process for really getting to the root of what truly is going on in a growth issue in a founder's brain?
Okay. Well, that's a great question. By the time people actually come to see me, almost always they already know the marketing is the problem because they've
Mm,
either read one of my books or seen the online courses. But in my book, Relaunch Code, I talk about a marketing system. I call it like the baseball diamond, where if you're on home plate, your first goal is to just have a reproducible product and reliable mechanics. So I score somebody on, are they doing okay there? Then the next one is money, and then the
mm,
next one is the manpower. What scores the runs is marketing. But if there's anything off kilter in the first
mm,
three, then they're not ready to do marketing because you certainly should not market a bad product or an unreliable product. Or if you don't have the right people in the seat, so to say, then you got a problem there. But by the time typically we're in conversation, we've they've either eliminated the other three and say those are good. And my what's holding me back is my marketing, and I
mm.
just don't have a reliable system. There's the old story of throwing stuff at the wall and hope enough of it sticks, and they realize that can only take them so far, and then they've kind of hit a flat line and realized they're ready to graduate to something a little bit more reliable.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So in that process, how does the diagnostic work? I mean, is there an assessment-based thing? Is there I mean, is that through conversation? Can you walk through your process a little bit of how that works?
Well, it's not a process in traditional sense that I'm sitting there diagnosing what their problem is because they're coming in saying, "BizTrek, you've got a marketing method. There's 12 triggers," and they realize they need to go from 1 through 12 in order.
Mm,
If you do it that way, then you can really scale any company. It doesn't really matter what it is once you know the process.
mm.
So it's they're more interested in learning the process and then having it customized to their situation. So whether they're self-implementing the courses and stuff, they can guide themselves. Sometimes they want to work with a mentor as well, because sometimes as a mentor, I'll ask tougher questions or maybe have a different creative bent on it. Um, but once they get the machine rolling, then the relationship after that, and that's typically about a 6 month process, a couple times a month for an hour. After that, then it's just many of them just stick around, say, "Hey, we want to keep working with you to keep the flywheel running," right? And deal because there's always something new. But the underlying operating system is the same thing for everybody. I start with everybody and just kind of go, "Okay, let's start with trigger one, then trigger two," and we just every meeting we deal with one of the triggers and just start adding up and climbing the stairs together.
Yeah. So in this season, one of the things that we're trying to focus in on is we called it stories from the session room. It's just kind of a creative little marketing, title, if you will. But I mean, is there a moment, you have worked with thousands of founders. I mean, I'm sure there are plenty of stories, if you will. But is there a specific situation where you got into a client engagement? You don't have to necessarily give any of the specific details away. So, but where there was an unlock where you were working with a founder or a team, and whether it was a principle from the framework or a specific question that was framed, is there something that comes to mind of an example of a just an example where it unlocked the room where it was just wow, here's this breakthrough moment that opens up how we can move forward?
Yeah, that actually happens quite often because the very first trigger, the first and second trigger is I call it the Hive. Trigger number one is who are you for, And then the second one is you answer the why question, the so what, before you start doing any tactics.
Mm,
So very often with people I'm working with, they realize that their brand positioning is not what they want. It's not scalable. It's
mm,
not the right messaging. It's just a jumbled thing. And most founders, they can grow a company for a while just on sheer personality, some good ideas. But then almost inevitably, every company hits a plateau where they reach the level of their skill,
mm,
and they're sitting there. And really, from there, it's either you either go down or you go up, and you got to hit that inflection point at some
mm,
point. So where things really where the light bulb goes off is real when they realize, oh, this is who I'm after. This is who I need to communicate. I need to stop all these other people, and then we craft a customized message
mm.
for them, and help them discover it on their own. And once they've kind of got that trigger one and trigger two in their brand, it's like things
Mm.
take off. I'm thinking of one client that I was talking with on Friday that went through this, and a year later, they've had 10 times their revenues are 10 times what they were a year ago.
Wow. That's amazing. Yeah, it's especially in those linear things where we start to build out, because I mean, this is really geared towards business coaches and consultants and
Mhm.
fractional executives and advisors, right? You know, we call it the Ambitious Coach Lab just to simplify it. One of the things that I think a competency that we talk about a lot on here is business development, right?
Right.
As a coach. So do you have any examples of whether it's coach, consultant, advisor? I don't know if you've ever worked with anybody in that lane, but I was curious to dive into the Hive thing because that's been something that another guest actually recommended, Jamie Mullican. He referenced that, and I will never forget when he called me his queen bee. I was like, what are you talking about?"
Yeah. Yeah,
And
my
so
term's getting out there quite a bit.
it is, and so I would love for you to take a moment to just kind of explain that because it was an unlock for me as it was an unlock for Jamie, and I've had other people mention it, and I think it's highly relevant to a coach-specific audience because that is a critical part of the success, so I wanna tee that up for you to, like, talk a little bit about that Hive.
I think, yeah, that's, I'll try to keep it short because
Sure.
obviously I've got a whole course on it. But
Yeah, right.
um, the core idea is in traditional marketing. Back in school, they used the word niche,
Mm,
and you got to find your marketing niche. And I found that was backwards mentality. For me, finding your niche is saying this is where I decide I'm going to hang out. So I liken it to the spider, where
mm,
the spider says, "I'm just going to decide to build a web here and I'll try to catch something. If something happens to land in my web, I'm just going to suck it dry for all it's got."
hmm,
And that's really not how the world works. If you look at how people communicate with each other, likes hang out with likes. And they tend to be close communities, close knit communities. So to me, it was more like a community of the bees, where
mm,
there's this whole thing to protect them from the outside world and one little way in, and there's some guards at the door to keep anybody that's not
mm,
invited in. So the idea of the hive is find a community that already exists. Don't go trying to create one, but find out how the world actually that you can serve, how they communicate with each other, where they communicate with each other, and who has what roles. So there's a queen bee that's the power center. There's drones that are doing all the work inside, and then there's some that are scouts that are going out in the world to say, "Oh, here's good stuff. Here's some honey. We need to bring it back." Okay,
mm,
and the idea with the hive is you want to be one of the ones that are invited in, and
mm.
then once you're inside, then you're the sole provider of that knowledge in the human world. And everybody else just says, "Oh, do you know Gil? Do you know Gil? Do you know Cam? Do you know
Mm.
Cam? You got to talk to so and so, right?" And everybody on the outside is trying to figure out how to get in. You're already there.
Oh, man, that's so relevant for coaches because, and then I also think such an important part to find that who, because I distinctly remember when I first launched my fractional practice, I had kind of put my flag down and had a ton of relational capital and reputation built in the EOS ecosystem. And then I ended up taking a client on that was outside of that. And it was so obvious that that was not my Hive.
Yep, yep.
Like, and I think both sides felt it, you know what I mean? And it wasn't like neither either one of us was in the wrong. It was just it just wasn't the Hive that I was supposed to be a part of. And I took it just as a moment of where I just needed some cash flow, and I realized very early on that that was the worst possible thing that I could do. And I as you were talking about that, it came as just crystallized in my brain of like, yeah, because that wasn't a hive that I was supposed to be in. I wasn't necessarily really even welcomed in it. And
Right. Well, and a deeper side of that, you didn't do the really that wasn't really doing the right thing by them. I think as business leaders, we all have a responsibility to do the best thing we can for the people. And if we're not the
Mm.
right fit, then say I'm not the right fit, but do you know so and so, right?
Yeah, right.
This person's in your hive, right?
Yes. And so, I mean, and because a lot of coaches have built successful practices like through reputation and relationships and referrals, right? Have you worked with somebody? This could be a coach, this could be a founder, because I
Yeah.
think it applies this, but we can apply it broadly to this audience specifically. But have you ever worked with somebody who hit a ceiling with that approach? Because you can only scale reputation and referrals and all that so much. Like, what would be the next step in that iteration process?
Okay, that's actually a great question, and it's actually one of my critiques of traditional coaching and consulting is it's called, and it leads to the boom bust cycle. Is they coaches tend to have 2, 3, 4, 5 clients at a time. They don't design for scalability from the beginning. Well, some of the best advice I got from my mentors when I was starting was start thinking scalability. Now,
Mm,
they didn't encourage me in that direction enough, and later on I had to do more. But if a coach is just concentrating on a few clients, then you've got a job just for a few people. So there's a thing I call the
mm,
10% rule that if any one of your clients is more than 10% of your income, you've got a job because
mm,
you're always fearful of that one major client going. Now, sometimes as you're starting up, that is a reality that they're going to be a significant part. But if you've got somebody who's a significant piece of your revenue, you want to make sure you diversify from that so that you've at least got 10 clients with 10% of revenue, right?
mm,
So when I first started, I was running 25, 30 clients just on my own
mm,
because when the time came that somebody was done or they were good or they sold the company more often than not, then they didn't need me anymore.
mm.
And, I mean, I've had some come back, they bought another company, said, Gil, time again. But,
Here we go, run it again.
but that 10% rule is where freedom comes. That's when you transition from a job, or to actually having a business. And so a big part, not only did I apply that to BizTrek, I eventually had 20 locations around the country before some life events happened.
Mm,
But that's where I see a lot of coaches get stuck, and then they get so desperate that they're not actually serving the client's interest
mm.
because they get so busy that they're taking care of all their clients. All of a sudden, one leaves, and then all of a sudden that downward spiral comes, and then all of a sudden now I panic, and then I got to build. Then they go get some more clients, but their wave tends to stay in the same range, and
Hmm.
they're not really building something extraordinary.
Interesting. So what would be your, guidance in getting them out of that cycle, let's say? I mean, what would be the recommendations that you would give? I don't want you to have to give too many of your trade secrets away, but
No, I think that's important, and I have worked with some coaches and consultants and stuff like that. Is do what I did is build a system, figure out what your system is, and figure out how to get it into other people's heads. So my goal is with BizTrek is not to keep all that inside information in my head, but to teach other people how to use it and do it themselves.
Hmm,
And so, if a good coach or consultant can create a system that then they can work with more people, teach that to more people, and they create a system that then becomes super scalable.
hmm,
And then you can start thinking about how do you serve 100, 200, 300, 400 companies? That's the question you should be asking. Could I do this? If you think about world class companies, they serve thousands and thousands of clients. Okay. And that's how you build wealth.
hmm,
You build you build an income and some money with a few clients. If you really want to build something great and a legacy, you think in terms of how can I influence a lot of people all at a time, and then you work with the VIP. So I've got a lot of different kind of clients. Some I've never met. They're using the system. I've got some VIP people that I work with one on one as CEOs, and they. So we have a personal relationship and sometimes a very long-standing relationship.
That's good. Do you find I had someone challenge me in a healthy way on this, because it was basically that similar premise, and it was a good friend of mine, and he was like, "Cam, you gotta stop selling your time for money."
Yes.
Can you double click into that of what that means? Like how we scale beyond that? Because I think most coaches, and myself included, I'm like, well, okay, because I'm a fractional, CRO, right? That's by trade, if you will. And so I'm selling my time in comparison for the money that I'm getting from a retainer standpoint, where I'm coming into a business for, say, a day at a time. And so, and coaches often similar. They're coming into a session, consultants, same thing. Like, what does it mean for that type of audience to scale beyond themselves and get out of that time for money type of thing?
Okay. Well, first, I got to say, is selling your time for money is not necessarily a bad thing because that's how most of the world does it, right? That
Right.
have one customer, their employer, right? Sometimes consultants, advisors, they'll split it out. They'll be fractional. They have three, four, five clients. But I think if somebody really wants to grow, then they have to focus on: do I have a system, or can I productize
Hmm.
what I've got? So in effect, can I put it in the hands of other people? So I alluded a little bit ago that, at one point I had 20 BizTrek offices around the country. Well, they would each follow the system with their groups of clients, and they could scale. But
Hmm.
that allowed me to have more people doing BizTrek. Um, I did have to end that in 2003. Just as a side story, my wife at the time, my late wife now, was
Hmm.
diagnosed with terminal breast cancer,
Hmm.
and I really was at a choice of, do I try to keep growing this stuff or just pull back? So for
Hmm.
4 years while she was doing it, I just said, okay, I've just got to take care of her.
Yeah.
Um, by that time, really, the internet had, and I was an early adopter of the internet, but that educational content really, by 2007, could be delivered on the internet. So I didn't need offices around the country. So that's really where I started saying, okay, here's my courses, here's the resources, and you can do this yourself. Okay,
Hmm.
so you can learn the system and deploy it. Then, if you need a little private advice, you can call, and we'll hook you up with somebody who can help you. Um, some of the people say, I really want to work with somebody one on one. So there's two variables there. Is somebody can be totally self implementation, not unlike EOS to some degree, right?
Yeah.
You got 90% of the EOS companies are self-implementers, and then you get the few smarter ones who say, I want to work with somebody,
Right.
okay? Because
Right.
I'm not good enough at this yet, or I might not hit the nail on the head. So that's kind of where the BizTrek mentor comes in. Is some people, the CEO wants that one-on-one relation. And I got to clarify too, is I don't BizTrek, we don't do group. We
Hmm.
only work with the CEO or the founder of the company. And then, because we don't want them to lose their leadership position authority, we want their staff to wonder how they got so smart so fast.
Hmm. I love that. I love that distinction. That makes total sense. It's the like speed pass, right?
Right.
um, so I want to dive into something because I'm curious. So let's say there's a lot of content out there
Yep.
in today's world, right? I mean, whether it's through content, through thought leaders. I mean, everybody's a thought leader on LinkedIn right now, or through AI, or through some strategy or tactic that's mentioned. I mean, what would you say to somebody, whether it's a CEO or a coach or whoever, a client? They come into the room excited about some LinkedIn strategy, a podcast, start a new email chain or, thread, a sequence that they went after. I mean, what would you say that will help them kind of just, all right, let's get out of the tactic world and actually think about what's ultimately best? Because it's so easy to jump on fads nowadays of like, well,
Right.
that worked for this person. I'm going to start a podcast. Like, how do you help people think through strategically what is best?
Well, that is actually, unfortunately, is a more common problem in small business because
Yeah.
they see somebody else doing this or that, and they just automatically assume that that's what they should be doing at this or that, right?
Yeah.
And so that goes back to the throw stuff at the wall and hope of it sticks. When they understand the hive and the hook and they realize who they're for,
Hmm.
then the first question is, where do your people hang out? Which flowers do they go to? What do they prefer? And where are they? They're not flying all over the place inefficiently. No, they're going to specific communities to get the pollen, the nectar, bring it back. And so I think that's a key thing. Once somebody figures out who their hive is, then
Hmm.
they go, where do they hang out? Then you figure out, how do they find out what's going on in the world around
Hmm.
them? Because everybody has to stay plugged into the world in one way or another, but they only look for relevant information. I'm frankly not too concerned about what's happening today on the island of Mauritius.
Hmm.
Okay? Don't need to know. I know where it is. I know of it. I know something about it, but it's not relevant to me.
Hmm.
So I don't need to go hang out marketing there. So for some people, Instagram is a great place. For some, it's totally wrong. For LinkedIn is right for some. Some it's going to networking events. Some it's not. It just depends where your clients are and where they're hanging out.
And I bet I mean, a lot of it probably does depend, and I'm speaking specifically to like a coach audience now, but dependent on their strengths and giftings. And I mean, some are great networkers and some are great up on stage, some are great on video, some the last thing you want them to do is get up on a stage, like, so I think you have to figure out that aspect. But after being able to figure out where is my hive going, I love that the flower analogy of where are they going. That's such an opened my brain so much as you said that, because that makes perfect sense. As you figure out who your hive is, then the next logical decision is, where are they at? Where are they going to? Is it a trade show? Is it, and okay, maybe if that's it, then we need to start speaking, and going to that
Bingo.
trade show. You start to build out the strategies and tactics from
Right.
there.
Well, and it keeps it real simple, much easier because overall, I have a list. There's about 120 different ways of marketing with a million variations for everybody, right? But roughly about 120 different tools that
Hmm.
we actually provide on the courses.
Wow.
And but nobody can do 120 different things. You can maybe do 5 to 7 well. But you need some ways to generate word of mouth. You need some ways to generate publicity. You need to advertise sometimes in the right place and do some direct promotion and some networking. You need some activity in all those areas, but only in the right way in the right places. And then, so more often than not, we take stuff off the table and just kind of go do these things well and forget about all the other stuff. Now, we certainly make a list of all the things they could do as part of the process. But then you kind of go, okay, now which ones of these have good ROI? Which ones produce the results? And
Hmm.
which ones can you automate as much as possible? Because if you're constantly having to reinvent the wheel, again, you don't have a machine, you have a job.
I would be remiss if I didn't ask this, because my brain is just like begging to ask this. Given such a rich history of coaching with lots and lots of clients, I'm sure you have gotten relatively good now to figure out what are the right green flags or green check marks versus red flags, not check marks, as you're thinking through potential clients. Can you talk a little bit about whether it's in the perspective preliminary calls of finding, okay, this would be someone that would be a worthwhile client that's going to take it seriously, is going to be the right fit, versus maybe somebody that's giving you red flags or maybe a little bit of just some like uneasiness as far as, I don't know if they're quite committed or if they're going to be the right fit for me. Can you talk through your process of how you identify that?
Yeah, well, I mean, one of the first things is, again, I run to the bases and make sure that we're really
Mm,
talking in the marketing and that they recognize that there's an issue there. And I very much, I mean, early on, I sit down. Okay, we're all about the process. I want you to be willing to learn the process, and but almost universally, by the time somebody comes to us, they're already there, right? Because
yeah.
they've had some friends say, "You need to learn that process." Right? That's a good question. I forgot my train of thought there, but
The really kind of thinking through from just, okay, I'm with a, let's just, I'll frame it in this way. there's a prospective client that you're sitting across from, what's the mental checklist that you're going down that's like, "Okay, this is someone that I wanna keep working with?" It sounds like it might be you probably catch a lot of it up front, but let's say just as you're going through over the years, how have you been able to find the right fit client for you? Maybe that's a better way
Okay,
to frame it.
okay. I mean, the one of the key things I look for is, are they sitting on a plateau? Like, have they grown it
Mm,
and realized, so they've kind of flatlined a little bit, and they realize it, and they realized they've admitted to themselves that they've kind of reached the limit of their capacity. Is it to
mm,
take it further? I need to learn something more. So, are they teachable? Are they hungry enough to do something? Are they willing to think differently? Because I'm going to take their brain in places they probably haven't thought of because
mm,
they don't know that, right? So, teachability and the plateau, I think, are one, and to degree, how hungry are they? Some people have a wish, some people have a need.
hmm. Open that up a little bit more, the wish versus the need.
Okay. Well, if you talk to most business owners, they all wish they could be 10 times bigger or 20
Yeah.
times bigger, and that would be nice because everybody wishes to be rich, right? But actually doing the work and
Mm,
being willing to think differently, sometimes that's uncomfortable. It's like first time you're learning to drive a car, you're thinking of everything you're doing, right? And all the steps. You play guitar, you know, you can do stuff automatically because you've done it so long.
mm,
If I would pick up a guitar, it's like, okay, here's the D and here's the C. Oh wait, I got to strum, and all this stuff, right? Well, a business owner has to be willing to kind of go, I need to do this and get good at it, and I need to learn it in the right order
mm,
so that I can create the machine. So I'm listening for that willingness to stop doing what they're doing and kind of go, I'm ready to learn a new and better way. And
hmm,
there's actually a lot of people who would just very candidly, they wish they could have more, but business owners tend to be fairly egocentric, and sometimes they don't like to drop their ego and admit to anybody else that they're not quite as sharp as they or as skilled in an area as they might like to
mm.
pretend.
What are some of the common mistakes that you see founders or your clients that are out there in the wild that they continue to make over and over? If you want to apply it to coaches and consultants to make it hyper relevant for this audience, that
Yeah.
would be appreciated. But I'm sure there's a lot of crossover with just founders too. So
Well, I think the number one is they keep trying to do today what they did yesterday, even though it didn't work.
yeah.
So I think this is especially true of coaches and consultants. They were in a career and in a job in the company, and they saw how that company did stuff, and they tried to transport that over
Mm,
to their world when it's not necessarily transportable. But they don't know anything else because that's the only way they've done it in their career.
hmm,
So if I'd been an engineer, if I'd been an engineering firm, I'm going to tend to do that. They don't even understand or know all the other ways that they could doing, and that some are better options in other ways. So I call it, throw the shit at the wall mentality that just is so common in business. And coaches and mentors and consultants tend to do that. They all do it the same way and they all look alike. But if you really understand your audience, you realize they could be doing. One guy may have an engineering audience and be really great in that. And you've had some guests; they know their community
hmm,
and they know where they hang out and they've infiltrated that community. Whereas others who are less successful are trying a little bit of everything, hoping that magically something will work. That, oh,
hmm,
I'm going to just start posting every day on LinkedIn, but it's not relevant content and the right people aren't seeing it, or they're going to networking events when their people aren't.
hmm.
I've been to networking events in town here where people who frankly can't afford me would love to meet with me. Well, I'm sorry, you're not big enough.
Right.
And you're not on a plateau yet. You're
Hmm.
still in that first stage.
Yeah. Man, that's good. One of the things that I'm so I think it's been an unlock for me as we've talked about this is how framework and process driven your entire methodology is. Your even the way that you're framing and almost like gauging the where people are at is based in whether it's the bases or whether it's the 12 triggers or the like you're thinking along this linear understanding of your framework that I think is such an incredible picture of a seasoned coach because you're just filtering through something that already exists. And I see a lot of newer coaches where it's almost just I'm grabbing tactics and I'm just trying to grab something that I've seen other people do that work, whereas yours is a very principled, framework based thing that probably has allowed you. I think that's ultimately the takeaway for me is the scalability of a framework versus a fad or a tactic or just basing it off of my personality. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, well, and I think you've kinda nailed it because that is probably where a lot of new coaches or beginning coaches go wrong, is they have an expertise, they're very good at something, and so they sometimes instinctively know a good answer,
Hmm,
but they don't necessarily facilitate the person that they're helping to understand that answer or to be able to continue their growth. So it's an old criticism of consultants, right? Is that the consultants will try to keep themselves in a job as long as possible
hmm,
because they had the knowledge, but they never found a way to transfer that knowledge. If you look at more seasoned coaches, they create a system. If you look at even great companies, here's our product. Here's what we do. Let me get this out of my head and into yours. Then you can use me to kind of keep you sharp.
hmm,
Okay, so I don't need to meet with somebody as often, once a month, once they've got the machine rolling, once a month just to keep the flywheel going is good. And they understand why they're doing what they're doing because it's written
hmm,
down in their marketing action plan. And we
hmm,
got a blueprint for all that. So, but a new coach will sit down, let's have a meeting and just kind of wing it.
hmm,
And you lose trust over time, and your
hmm,
longevity with the client is lost over time because after a while they don't know what you're bringing to the table. But if they see that you have a system and you're just helping them implement this system and keep it solid, and then come up with improvements as you're going on, that's a long term relationship. I mean, I've had
wow.
clients that I've worked with personally for over 10 years.
Wow. That's a really good word. I'm glad we went there. What would you say, if you could look in your, metaphorical crystal ball? You've been a coach for a long time, and you've seen a lot of change in the industry over the years. What would you say? I mean, we have had a new, technological advancement here in the last few years called AI.
Yeah, love it.
What would you
User.
say yeah, what would you say is the future of coaching and consulting? Like, what would if you had to what's the next 5, 10 years gonna look like?
Okay. Well, the core rule in business is all about relationships.
Hmm,
So when the internet came along, people said, "Oh, this is going to change everything," and it did. It changed how we did stuff. AI is a wonderful tool to make us more efficient, but ultimately, business is about relationships, right?
hmm,
And that means people want to talk with people and understand what do I do with what's going on now? So, okay, you got AI. What do we do with it? What does it mean for me? How do I deploy that? What's the tactical advantage? Well, the tools don't tell you how to use them best. They just says, "Here I am."
hmm,
Okay, so are we going to have more and better tools all the time? Absolutely. That's the wonder of today's world. But two brains together, sitting down with a
hmm,
mentor, sitting with a CEO or a founder, and say, "Okay, how do we work this to advantage? How do we serve your hive more effectively? How do we help them solve a problem?"
hmm.
Then that's where value is created. If you look at people who create wealth and freedom, is they help other people figure out not just the information, but what do I do with it? So,
Mm.
businesses is and relationships are about not only what are the things I need to do, but how do I do it? I mean, that's sometimes the problem inside the US is I know I need to fill the marketing seat. I need to get somebody to partner with. I need a marketing plan, but how?
Mm.
And then it's like, "Oh, I need to go work with somebody." Well, that's the right answer, right?
Yeah.
Your implementer can help you, or their implementer can take you to somebody. That's and so that's really what coaches
Mm.
can look for as well is they're alongside their clients to help them figure out what these innovations mean and how to use them to advantage and have experience in that. That's never
Yeah.
changed. That's a human history.
Yeah, you're right, and that's not gonna change due to some insane technological advancement. I've said that for years. There dec tens of thousands of documented human history has been community based. It's
Yeah.
been life on life,
Yeah.
one on one, and
And nobody's gonna duplicate your brain nor mine. Probably nobody wants to duplicate mine, but
yeah, my I'll throw myself in there too. Yeah.
um, But, so, yeah, I think when you understand that,
Mm.
then technology is a tool, and there's always new technology. I'm not worried about AI. I think, it can allow some great things. Doesn't eliminate the need for coaching. Perhaps it even increases it.
Yeah, that's I love that. That's such a great outlook on it. I would look back and all of the moments of my life that have had true transformational change have been the catalyst of that has been a one-on-one coaching type relationship, a
Yeah,
life on a life, and that's not necessarily me listening, like, to a podcast. It's been me sitting down in someone's office or me sitting down with someone at Josie's Chuck Wagon and, drawing things out on a napkin and whatnot, of that's been where things have unlocked. So I completely agree with you. That is not going to go away. There's something powerful and almost incredibly human about life on life, brain with brain, being able to unlock things. And the art of dialogue, I think, is where that comes from. And that's just not I mean, you could call it a dialogue with AI, but it's just I don't know, there's something almost in the spiritual realm that happens when you're connecting with another human.
yeah.
And so I think that's the way that we were designed from the start. So,
Yeah. Well, it's the fundamental difference between information and know-how versus
mhm,
creativity. Two people putting their head together will be creative. You and me may come up with one set of solutions. You and somebody else may have a different set of
mm,
solutions, but there will be creative going on, and that's the power of. And then you can brainstorm together and say, okay, does this fit the rules? Does this fit the process? And you kind of go from there.
yeah, that's so true. Well, Gil, man, this is time has flown by. I've enjoyed this so much. I always like to ask guests on kind of the tail end here, if you could go back to rookie Gil, let's say right when in was it 1994, when you're first setting out to start this coaching business, with all the knowledge and experience that you have now, what advice would you give rookie Gil?
I would say the lesson or the thing going back is start with the super scale mindset right from the beginning. So I started more or less with the one mindset kind of thing. Okay, this could be something, but if I had designed it for 4 or 500 or 1,000 people at the beginning, it might have been a little bit different. And I mean, the principles are the same, but it might have designed the business a little bit different.
Mm,
So I would probably say, I mean, I've had a mentor pretty much all my life, at least one, if not two. But I would, if I were mentoring myself, I'd say, go
mm.
back to super scale, create a machine that doesn't necessarily need you to be in every single meeting and every single discussion because there's only so much of you to go around.
Yeah, the compound, impact of that is enormous.
Yeah.
So that's a good word. I think for especially for those coaches that are early on in their growth, that's really a great mindset to have. How am I gonna scale this? So that's a
Well, and
good
I'd go
word.
that's I use actually the word super scale because it changes the mind just a
Yeah.
little. Scale might mean I'm going
Mm.
from 10 to 15 or 20 or 100.
Yeah.
Think about what if it was 1,000 or 10,000? I
Hmm.
mean, I when I had my software company in Seattle, I actually met Bill Gates. Now, I will tell you, he's a lot richer than I am because what? He figured out how to serve millions of people.
Super scale. I like that. That's a good clarification because I definitely said scale, and you're absolutely right. There's a whole nother level of thinking with the super scale. So that's good. And even if you get to, somewhere in between, you're still an integrator. It's that thinking bigger, right?
Yeah.
Man, that's good. The second question I always like to ask is, what's a lesson you're in the middle of learning in this current moment?
Well, it actually comes back to that original one is really expanding BizTrek's ability to help people with implementation. I mean, I've got my
Mm,
books and I'm writing more books to kind of expand that. We've got the courses, but they need some updating. I think it's time to jazz them up a little bit more. So rolling that out over the next year or two will allow people to self-implement more effectively. There will come a day where I'm no longer on this earth, but the people still need the system, right?
mm,
So that's the next step. When you get to my age, you start thinking legacy and
mm.
maybe not working so hard. But I've got my clients. I love working with them. They're so much fun. But there's people out there who need to know this stuff, and um, BizTech needs to do a slightly better job of rolling that out.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's I appreciate your opening up on that. It's a powerful thing, and that legacy is something that, yeah, I can see that. So, well, Gil, this has been awesome. Thank you for taking the time to chat. Let's say somebody wants to get in touch with you and learn more about your work, or maybe pick your brain on something. What's the best place to get in touch with you?
Well, the easiest, number one is for me is the website because BizTrek is easier to spell than my name, so it's really like Star Trek, but with a biz in front of it because we're all
Yep,
but BizTrek will take you everywhere. There's a page in there to take you to my books and the courses. There's links. I'm on LinkedIn, but so like you said, I'm the only Gil Gerretsen in the world. But
just Google.
sometimes just Google me, but sometimes Gerretsen is a little hard to spell because my name is all with E's on it. So instead, um, but the website will take you there. It'll take you to my Twitter and all that kind of. But if you go to biztrek.com, biztrek.com, you'll find everything and go from there.
I love it. I'll link out to that in the show notes to make it super easy for people. But Gil, I appreciate you coming on and sharing your wisdom. I have appreciated our friendship over the years. I'm glad we crossed paths, and the amount of people you've impacted in the Greenville community, but way beyond that, is remarkable. And I thank you for the impact that you've had on my life. It means a lot, and I appreciate you taking the time to come in and talk on this show. So.
Well, thank you for inviting me. It's been an absolute pleasure. It went,
Yes,
like you said, it went fast.
it did. It always does every single time. I'm like, "Man, we're coming up on an hour. How did that happen?" So, they were like originally, they were like, "We'll try to make these 20, 30 minutes." I was like, "Do you know me? That is impossible." So, well, cool. Well, Gil, thanks again, and thank you for tuning in. We've got plenty more episodes where that came from. Take care. That's it for today's episode of the Ambitious Coach Lab. My hope is that something here helps you sharpen your craft and keep building a coaching practice you're proud of. Before we wrap, a quick thank you to our sponsor, 90. If you're coaching leadership teams, having your clients run their entire world in 90 truly elevates your work. Vision, rocks, scorecards, issues, it all lives in one centralized place. The clarity keeps your clients aligned between sessions and makes every conversation you have with them more focused and more impactful. I've used 90 with over 500 leadership teams, and I can tell you it makes great companies better and great coaches even more effective. Feel free to use promo code AC20 for 20% off. Again, that's AC20 for 20% off. Thanks for hanging out with me today. I'm Cam, cheering you on as you grow your ambitious coaching practice. We'll see you next time.